Hello guys, and welcome to Supreme Ruler 2030. Yesterday I made a guide about loyalty in Supreme Ruler Ultimate, and today we're going to talk about loyalty and how it's changed in Supreme Ruler 2030. While we go over this, please ignore the color of the ocean and the fact that it all belongs to Norway. These are bugs. This is still a beta leading up to the game's release. But let's get talking about loyalty. So first thing we need to do is swap over to the loyalty map, and we can see, well, if you watched my video yesterday, of course, the loyalty map in 2030 looks notably different to how it looked in Supreme Ruler Ultimate, and that's because it really has changed quite a lot, and there's even some information that's just really not communicated here if you're used to SRU. Now, assuming you're not used to SRU, I'm going to give you a little rundown of what loyalty is. Loyalty is a system that determines the base countries that can exist in Supreme Ruler. Without special exceptions, no countries can exist that do not start in one of these loyalties unless they already start at the beginning of the scenario, separate to where these loyalties are placed. I'll talk a little bit about SRU since we are comparing the changes here. In SRU, for example, America only had one loyalty on the mainland, and that was the core American loyalty. It also went for Alaska and even Hawaii. Most of the territories also had the core American loyalty, like over in the Pacific. The only notable exception was Puerto Rico, which has always been made a colony and thus given its own loyalty separate. If you look at the UK, it's always been split into different loyalties, albeit there's more here. There was the base England loyalty, there was the Scotland loyalty. Right here and here were actually just English loyalty in SRU, and then there was the North Irish and the Irish loyalties. Without already existing at the start of the game, no country could exist that did not start or release into one of these loyalties. In SRU, loyalties came with a bunch of buffs and debuffs. Basically, if it wasn't your core loyalty and you annexed it or did not make a colony out of it, you were going to be debuffed in some way or another. That was just a given. There was no way around it. And this fact was the basis of everything that I taught in my guide yesterday and how the entire loyalty system's buffs and debuffs worked. Well, the thing is, in 2030, that is completely gone. Now, there is still a base loyalty, but you can't see it on the map. And there's no map filter that can show you it either. Basically, there's now an invisible loyalty, for example, for the United Kingdom. It is currently applied to every single thing that they start the game owning. North Ireland, Scotland, whatever the fuck this is, England, Wales, you name it. If they currently have it annexed, this invisible UK loyalty is applied there and will be remembered. The English loyalty itself is now similar to what non-loyal loyalties were before. It now has its own loyalty to this upper loyalty. I wish they had a filter for this so I could visually show you it, but here's what we have. For example, England has 74% loyalty to United Kingdom. I can't show you the United Kingdom loyalty, but it is there, and this is how it is determined. It's an overarching thing that applies to everything you annex, but it also has a base level that is remembered, as it was explained to me by the game's developers. And so this change in how everything works has a number of notable effects that I'm going to explain to you guys, and that I'd like to hear your thoughts on. I'm sure the devs would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. One of the quicker things to go over is what this core remembrance of loyalty is. So like I said, the UK loyalty is overarching. If you annex something, it will be applied to it. However, loyalties, for example, England, North Ireland, Scotland, they will remember first and foremost that they started out with the UK. So for example, let's say Ireland takes over North Ireland, and then the UK goes to war and tries to take it back, but they only take back half of it. Then, as it has been explained to me, if you go and you resolve the peace by loyalty, which is a new option that I've gone over in an earlier video, North Ireland will remember, even if the UK only owns Belfast, that it originally belonged to the UK at the start of the game, and thus they would be handed back the entirety of Northern Ireland. I plan on testing the newer implementation of this system in a later video if I get the time to do it. And this system would allow you to have a core loyalty that you could resolve for and try to maintain in wars, and the AI could do as well, as the AI are much better about warring and making peace in this game than they were in SRU. But that is the extent of how that will interact with making peace deals and war. It's really everything else that's the complicated part. So in Supreme Ruler Ultimate, loyalty was pretty much a flat rate. Your core loyalty, for example, England, would be 100% all the time. And every other loyalty, like Scotland, North Ireland, or any colonies or other territories that you chose to annex, would be 70%. This percentage, this flat rate, would affect the industry and production of every single facility that produced a resource or processed a resource that you placed in that loyalty. So you always wanted to place things, if possible, in your core territory. Well, that's not a thing anymore, because even something you might consider a core territory has its own loyalty, and every loyalty can have a different level of loyalty to the country that owns it. They start out pretty much the same, but they can vary and differ depending on how things go and depending on how things are influenced. So, for example, 74% loyalty to the United Kingdom would have a 74% rate as opposed to a 100% rate of production. There is also still, and I don't believe in the current implementation this scales, but it might. A dev might be able to answer that. There's a reason I didn't cover this after my first impressions, is because it's just such an unfinished thing, and they've really been saving this for last to really get going. But I know more than I've ever known about it now, so I wanted to talk about it now. And that's the line of sight here. As you can see, I don't have line of sight in parts of my own territory, notably parts where it's hard to see in my own territory. This is normal for places that do not have your core loyalty in SRU. Now, without a core loyalty, I'm not entirely sure how it's going to interact. In the current implementation, visibility doesn't seem to scale with the loyalty level. 79%, and everywhere that is just like a certain terrain type appears to be just 100%, no line of sight, no matter what, because these are all acting as like a sub or secondary loyalty rather than the core loyalties from SRU. This is still a game option though, to enable or disable this, which makes me believe that it might end up scaling in some way. Certainly supply production would scale with that LOS and supply penalties per loyalty. So we have industry, which will scale production. We have supply, which will scale spread. And we have line of sight, which does not currently seem to scale, but instead is just preset on certain terrain types, low visibility terrain types. 2 out of 3 of these things can just be eliminated from the game by disabling an option on the main menu that I personally never play with. And so we get down to a newer thing that players will have to worry about. And this kind of goes and touches with colonies as well, how colonies can kind of fight for their independence and whatnot. That is because colonies have their own loyalty bar just like we have here. So for example, if I release Texas as a colony, it will have a loyalty just the same as these territories have loyalty to me. There's a big difference in how this will end up working on the game's release, as I've learned by speaking to George on the dev team for Supreme Ruler. If a colony gets super disloyal, then they will just leave and take whatever units you gave them with them, and then you'll have to fight them to get them back. However, if something annexed, and I don't believe it works like this in the current implementation, but George expressed it's how they want to make it work by the time the game releases, this will end up working pretty similarly to SRU disloyalty, where in SRU, if your spending, let's go pull up the social spending, on law enforcement was not high enough, partisans and guerrillas would raise. Except now there's like a new factor to it. Rather than just needing law enforcement spending to be higher to prevent them, you can also kind of prevent it just by keeping all the loyalties happy. So for example, if I kept Texas super duper happy, high loyalty, like 100%, then they would never spawn partisans, they would never spawn militia, guerrillas, whatever unit they end up getting given to try to claim independence. They would never get any of that. However, if, what is this, Louisiana, if they had like 0% loyalty, they would try to spawn this shit left and right, like armed insurrection type shit. And the way that I would have to prevent that is by spending on law enforcement. That's how I would prevent it if I'm not doing otherwise a good enough job of keeping them happy otherwise. Anyway, that is how the new loyalty system functions in its current form, and has been explained to me that it will function on the game's release. I have thoughts, I have opinions. Let's talk about some of those. So, for one, when it comes to the line of sight thing, I feel like that really needs to somehow have a way to scale with the loyalty if it doesn't already. In terms of industrial capacity, I think this new system actually works very well. It actually adds more value to annexing things and trying to maintain them yourselves. It adds more value into social spending and not being a warmongering dickhead. And then the expansion of the colony system allows there to still be a lot of purpose to colonizing something, even though the reasons you would colonize something in SRU are now kind of moot. I love the whole remembering an original loyalty thing. So if I went to war with Canada and then I resolved by loyalty, then it would remember the original state loyalties and then just like hand it back to the original owners. That will allow war between AI and even players to kind of retain historical boundaries. One thing I would change is I would add some sort of map filter here to allow us to see what the original loyalty of something was then, like who is the parent loyalty. Because as of right now, I just have loyalty and loyalty level, and none of those help me understand where things originally belong to. Like, what if I wasn't American? What if I was like Japanese and I didn't know if this belonged to Canada or America? What if I was Indonesian and I didn't know if this was part of Italy or France? What if I was, I don't know, South African and I didn't know if New Mexico was part of Mexico or not? You know, like, I think there needs to be a visual display to what the parent loyalty is, but the concept is great. I am happy to be able to talk about this feature overhaul and this new system finally. I'm very happy to be able to know how the hell it's gonna work. I've been waiting for so long, it feels like now, to talk about it, and I can't wait to see the final version of it at release, because with the way it works, it definitely sounds like it'll be really interesting to interact with. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and also make sure to tell me if you have any other ideas you want to see me cover before the game releases, or at this point, even after the game releases. I've been covering this game for quite a bit now. I have a playlist in the description below if you'd like to look at it and see my other videos covering what Supreme Ruler 2030 is going to be like when the game's going to release and all that fun stuff. This is the month of the game's release, so I might have to rush to get all the coverage out before it does, so definitely make sure to get your ideas in now so I can do my best to cover as much as possible, so you can figure out if this is the game for you to purchase on release, or if you might want to wait, or whatever the hell you're watching this series for. For now though, that's it for today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope I'll see you on the next one.